When people talk about retiring in New York, the conversation almost always ends at the airport. You sell the house, pack the car, and drive south until you hit a state with no income tax and a Publix on every corner. And that is a fine plan. But it ignores something that a growing number of retirees are figuring out on their own. New York, the state, not the city, is full of towns that are not just livable in retirement. They are genuinely excellent. Towns where the lake is clean enough to drink from. Towns where the hospital employs more people than actually live in the village. Towns where the daily routine is a walk to a bakery on a main street that has looked the same since 1860. This list is 10 of them, and I will say right now that number 1 has one of the strangest origin stories of any retirement town in the country. A place people once went to die that became, somehow, one of the best places in New York to grow old. And number 3 involves a factory that used to print boxes for sandwich cookies that is now one of the most important art museums on the planet. Stick around for that. Before we get into it, like this video and drop the place and time you are watching from in the comments. I want to see where this list is traveling. Before we continue, a woman moved to Manhattan on a $75,000 salary and was broke within 3 months. Rent ate half her income. A coffee and bagel cost her $14 every morning. She didn't have a spending problem. She had a strategy problem. It took me 17 weeks of hard work to put together a guide with real-life case studies that breaks down exactly how to beat the New York money game. Rent hacks, grocery strategies, transit savings, the works. It comes with a yearly expense tracker designed to help you manage spending and stay financially disciplined. Click the link in the description to grab your copy. Now, let's get into it. Number 10. Canandaigua. If you have never tried to pronounce it, here is your free pass. It is Canandaigua, and the name itself is the first thing worth knowing, because in the Seneca language, it means the chosen spot. Stand at Kershaw Park on a July morning, where a public beach meets a lakefront walkway that runs along the northern tip of Canandaigua Lake, and you will understand why someone chose it. The water is flat and silver before the boats come out. The gazebos along the shore are empty. The Finger Lakes wine country starts about 15 minutes in any direction, and the air smells like cut grass and warm dockwood. Canandaigua sits at the top of the 4th largest Finger Lake, about 25 miles southeast of Rochester. The population hovers around 11,000. It is big enough to have a hospital, Thompson Health, a full-service regional system right in town, and small enough that the person checking you in might also be the person you see at the farmer's market on Saturday. What sets this town apart for retirees is how much of the good stuff is public. The lake access does not require a country club membership or a waterfront property. Kershaw Park has a beach, a dock, a boat launch, and a picnic area, and it is all open. Kayaking, sailing, and open water swimming run from May through October without a velvet rope in sight. Then there is Sonnenberg Gardens, a 40-room Queen Anne mansion from the late 1800s surrounded by 9 formal Victorian gardens spread across 50 acres. It is the kind of place you visit once and then keep finding reasons to go back in different seasons, which is exactly the kind of attraction that makes retirement in a place feel different from vacationing in one. And here is a detail that does not get enough attention. In 1794, representatives of the young United States government and leaders of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy signed the Treaty of Canandaigua. It is one of the most important diplomatic agreements in early American history, and it is still honored every year with a ceremony in town. A place the Seneca called the chosen spot 1,700 years before the treaty, and retirees are still choosing it today for exactly the same reason. The lake is right there, and nobody is asking for a membership card. Number 9. Warwick. Drive about 60 miles north of Manhattan into Orange County and the landscape changes fast. The subdivisions thin out. The roads start to curve. And then you are in Warwick, a village where the main street storefronts are made of brick and clapboard that date back to the 1800s, and the hills on every side are covered in apple orchards. Warwick has a population of about 6,650. It is close enough to the city that your children and grandchildren can visit without booking a flight, and far enough away that nobody is commuting through your morning. The surrounding farmland is not decorative, it is working. Apple orchards, horse farms, and small vineyards ring the village in every direction, And in October, the whole area turns into a regional destination for cider, donuts, and foliage that people drive 2 hours to see. If you live here, you just walk outside. But here is what makes Warwick more than a pretty village with good apples. In the early 2000s, a firm called Duany Platter Zyberk, the architects who essentially invented new urbanism, designed a 55-plus community here called Warwick Grove. It is not a gated compound with a golf course. It is a walkable, traditional neighborhood laid out like a Norman Rockwell painting, with porches that face the street, a community post office, a clubhouse, and sidewalks that connect directly to the village main street. The whole idea was that retirement should not mean isolation. It should mean a front porch. There is Revolutionary War history layered under the village too. After the British defeat at Saratoga, General Burgoyne and his army camped on the outskirts of town. Martha Washington stayed at Baird's Tavern, which still stands on Main Street. The past is not behind glass here. It is the building you walk into to get coffee. The Albert Wisner Public Library, a few blocks away, hosts book clubs, movie nights, and concerts that draw both the Warwick Grove residents and the wider village, blurring the line between the retirement community and the town in exactly the way the designers intended. Healthcare access runs through St. Anthony Community Hospital and the Alamo Health Center, both nearby. And Stewart International Airport is less than 30 miles north, which matters if your retirement plan includes grandchildren on the other coast. A village where the architects of an entire urban design movement decided to build a retirement community shaped like a small town, because the small town was already that good. Number 8. Corning. In the southern tier of New York, near the Pennsylvania border, there is a city of about 10,000 people that built its entire identity around a single material: glass. And it works. Walk down Market Street in the Gaffer District. Corning's walkable downtown, and the Victorian-era storefronts house independent restaurants, bookshops, and boutiques that feel curated without feeling precious. The brick facades have been restored, the sidewalks are wide, and the whole district is compact enough that a retiree with a cup of coffee and a slow morning can cover the entire thing on foot without needing to get back in a car. The anchor is the Corning Museum of Glass, founded in 1951 by Corning Glass Works. It holds more than 50,000 glass objects spanning 3,500 years of human history. Egyptian vessels from 1,500 years before the Common Era sit in the same building as contemporary sculptures that look like frozen light. But the detail that catches most retirees off guard is the hands-on studio. You can take a class and make your own glass. Not a trinket, an actual piece of glass-blown art guided by a professional finished the same day. For people in retirement looking for something genuinely new to learn, this is not a gimmick. It is a craft you could spend years getting good at, and the resources to do it are right in town. The museum gives Corning its national profile, but the town itself does the daily work. The Gaffer District hosts a weekly farmers market in summer. Local residents get a 50% discount on museum admission, which means retirees treat the place less like a tourist attraction and more like a second living room. The Finger Lakes Wine Trail starts minutes away. Guthrie Corning Hospital provides local health care, and the Elmira Corning Regional Airport is a 15-minute drive with direct flights to Detroit and Orlando. Here is the part that sticks, though. Corning was devastated by Hurricane Agnes in 1972. The Chemung River flooded the town and destroyed much of the downtown. The community rebuilt it from the bones, and the Gaffer District that exists today is the result of that rebuilding. It was not always this charming. It chose to become this way. A town that was underwater 50 years ago, rebuilt around a material that is made by melting sand, and turned itself into one of the most walkable downtowns in upstate New York. Sticking with us so far? Good. Because the next 4 entries are where this list starts landing in places you have to see to believe, including a town with a legally haunted house in a village where the hospital employs more people than actually live there. Number 7. Nyack. Nyack sits on the west bank of the Hudson River in Rockland County, about 25 miles north of the Manhattan line, and its official motto is "Art and Soul on the Hudson." That sounds like a tourism slogan somebody came up with over lunch. Except Nyack actually earns it. The walkable downtown runs along Broadway and Main Street, packed with galleries, jazz clubs, antique shops, and restaurants that range from upscale American to inventive Greek. The village is less than 1 square mile. You can walk every block of commercial Nyack in an afternoon and still have time to sit in Memorial Park, watch kayakers on the Hudson, and catch the light change on the Tappan Zee. Nyack Beach State Park and Hook Mountain are both within walking or short driving distance, and the trails are flat enough at the base that they work for people who want exercise, not an expedition. The village was home to Edward Hopper, the painter whose work defined a particular kind of American loneliness. He was born here in 1882, and the Edward Hopper Art Center in his childhood home preserves his early sketches and personal artifacts, including a reconstructed view from his bedroom overlooking the river. For retirees with any interest in American art, this is not a replica or a plaque. It is the actual room. And then there is the house on Levetta Place. In 1991, a buyer named Stambovsky sued the owner of a house here after discovering that the seller had previously reported it as haunted and had even been featured in Reader's Digest for the ghost stories. The court ruled, and this is real, that the house was legally haunted and that the seller was required to disclose the haunting to prospective buyers. It is one of the strangest real estate rulings in American legal history, and it happened in a retirement-friendly village on the Hudson. Carson McCullers, the novelist, lived here from 1945 until her death in 1967. Her home is on the National Register of Historic Places. Nyack does not put its culture behind a gift shop. It lives in the buildings, a village small enough to walk end to end in 20 minutes, where the most famous legal case involved a ghost in the most famous resident painted loneliness, and where retirees show up anyway because the real Nyack is anything but lonely. Number 6. Cooperstown. You know the name. Everyone does. But what most people do not know about Cooperstown is the number that actually makes it work as a retirement town, and it has nothing to do with baseball. The village sits at the southern tip of Otsego Lake in Otsego County. Population roughly 1,850. One traffic light. A main street that looks like a 1950s postcard, lined with baseball card shops, independent bookstores, and cafes that serve food made from local farms. The National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum draws around 260,000 visitors a year, which gives the village a lively summer season without turning it into a resort town. In October, the tourists leave, the lake stays, and Cooperstown becomes the quiet, walkable village that the people who actually live here signed up for. But here is the number. Bassett Healthcare Network, headquartered right here in the village, employs roughly 2,500 people. The hospital employs more people than live in the town. Bassett Medical Center is a 180-bed acute care teaching facility affiliated with Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons. It offers 24-hour emergency and trauma care, comprehensive cancer and heart care, and most major surgical specialties. For a village of under 2,000 people, this is not just good health care. It is extraordinary health care. It is the kind of medical access you would expect in a city of 200,000, and it is sitting at the foot of a glacial lake in a town with one traffic light. The Clark Sports Center rounds out the physical side. 110,000 square feet of fitness space, including an indoor pool, full gym, and 17 acres of outdoor fields. Otsego Lake itself offers kayaking, fishing, and open water swimming from late spring through fall. And there is not a single fast food chain in the village. The Clark family, descendants of the Singer sewing machine fortune, quietly maintained that standard for decades, and the result is a main street that feels curated by taste rather than commerce. James Fenimore Cooper, whose father founded the village, set his leather-stocking tails here. The lake he called Glimmerglass is Otsego, and on a still morning, that name still fits. A village where the hospital is bigger than the town, the lake is called Glimmerglass, and the Hall of Fame is not even the most important institution on Main Street. Number 5. Geneseo. Geneseo is the kind of town that does not show up on most retirement lists, which is exactly why it belongs on this one. It sits in Livingston County, about 30 miles south of Rochester, and the name Geneseo is an anglicization of the Seneca word for good sand there. The village population is around 7,500, and the energy on Main Street comes from a source that most retirement towns do not have: a college campus. SUNY Geneseo, consistently ranked among the top public liberal arts colleges in the Northeast, sits at the edge of the village. The campus does not overwhelm the town. It sharpens it. The college brings lectures, concerts, theater, and a steady flow of young energy that keeps the downtown from going quiet in February. For retirees, this means a farmer's market that has an audience, a main street with restaurants that stay open year-round, and a cultural calendar that does not depend on tourism season. At the center of Main Street sits the Bear Fountain, a cast-iron fountain that has been the village landmark since 1878. The storefronts around it are a mix of independent shops, pizza joints, and cafes that serve both students and the older residents who have been coming to the same counter for decades. It is a town where the 80-year-old and the 18-year-old share a sidewalk, and that mix is rarer and more valuable than most people realize. But the real knockout is 20 minutes south. Letchworth State Park, sometimes called the Grand Canyon of the East, covers 14,000 acres along the Geneseo River. The gorge drops 600 feet. 3 major waterfalls crash through it. The hiking trails range from paved and gentle to steep and serious, and the overlooks are the kind that make you stop mid-sentence. For retirees who want a reason to get outside every week, Letchworth does not just provide one, it provides 100. And because it is a state park, not a national one, the crowds are a fraction of what you would find at comparable scenery anywhere else in the Northeast. Healthcare runs through Livingston County, with Noyes Health in nearby Dansville and Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester, a manageable drive north. The Geneseo Valley is also flat enough for easy cycling, and several retirees in the area treat the valley roads as their daily exercise loop. A college town where the fountain on Main Street is older than the college, and the canyon 20 minutes away makes the Grand Canyon comparison without blushing. Still here? What comes next are the 4 entries I kept coming back to while researching this list. Towns so well suited to retirement that I genuinely had trouble ranking them. Let us finish this. Number 4, Rhinebeck. If you want to know what kind of town Rhinebeck is, start with the inn. The Beekman Arms on the corner of Route 9 and Mill Street has been in continuous operation since 1766. That is 10 years before the Declaration of Independence. George Washington ate here, Alexander Hamilton drank here, Franklin Delano Roosevelt launched his presidential campaign from the front steps. The building is still open. You can book a room tonight. Rhinebeck sits in Dutchess County, in the heart of the Hudson Valley, with a population of about 7,500. The village has one of the largest historic districts in the United States, listed on the National Register, and the downtown looks almost exactly the way it did on a village map from 1890. Boutique shops, galleries, and restaurants line East Market Street and Montgomery Street, and the whole commercial center operates at a scale that rewards walking and punishes hurrying. The Upstate Films Theater screens independent and foreign films year-round, which sounds like a small detail until you are retired and realize that having a cinema with actual taste within walking distance changes the shape of a Tuesday. The Dutchess County Fairgrounds hosts events throughout the year, including the Rhinebeck Craft Fair and the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, which draws tens of thousands. In December, the village hosts Sinterklaas, a Dutch-inspired holiday festival that fills the streets with costumed characters, lantern parades, and performances. It is the kind of event that exists because the town remembers it was founded by the Dutch in 1686 and treats that history as something to celebrate, not just commemorate. For retirees who want access to New York City without living anywhere near it, Rhinebeck's answer is the Amtrak station in Rhinecliff, about 4 miles west. A train ride to Penn Station takes roughly 90 minutes. You can visit grandchildren, see a show, and be home in time for dinner. The village also sits close enough to the Northern Dutchess Hospital in nearby Rhinecliff for routine health care, with more specialized services available at Vassar Brothers Medical Center in Poughkeepsie, about 20 minutes south. Wilderstein Historic Site, a Queen Anne mansion on the river built in 1852, anchors the eastern edge of the village. FDR's niece lived there. The grounds overlook the Hudson, and the house itself is a museum of Victorian excess that somehow does not feel excessive. It feels earned. The oldest operating inn in America, a train to Manhattan, and a main street that has been holding its shape for over a century in a town that somehow still feels undiscovered. Number 3, Cold Spring. Cold Spring is the town that makes people stop mid-sentence. It sits in Putnam County on the east bank of the Hudson River, population roughly 2,000, and the entire village is built on a slope. Main Street runs downhill from the village center to the water, and when you reach the bottom, Foundry Dock Park opens up in front of you with a direct, unobstructed view of Storm King Mountain rising across the river. The mountain fills the frame like a painting, And the fact that it does this every single day is the kind of detail that retirement is supposed to be made of. The downtown is walkable by definition. 19th century storefronts house antique dealers, independent restaurants with Hudson River views from their back decks, and a cafe culture that runs on conversation, not speed. The Cold Spring Antique Center alone could occupy an afternoon. The architecture above the shop windows is Federal and Victorian, largely original and in good enough condition that the whole village feels preserved rather than restored. But the history underneath the charm is sharper than it looks. In 1818, the West Point Foundry opened here, an ironworks built to reduce American dependence on European munitions. During the Civil War, the foundry produced Parrott rifles, the rifled cannons that gave the Union a significant artillery advantage. The foundry was one of the most important industrial sites in the war effort, and it operated right here, at the foot of this quiet village. Today, the foundry is the West Point Foundry Preserve, managed by Scenic Hudson. The blast furnaces are ruins. The casting pits are overgrown. Elevated walkways cross the old industrial zones and lead to viewpoints over the river. It is free, it is peaceful, and it is the kind of walk where history does not lecture you. It just sits there. Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve, directly accessible from the village, contains over 9,000 acres of trails. Metro North runs from the village station to Grand Central Terminal in about an hour and 15 minutes. And the Butterfield Condominiums, a 55-plus community built on the site of the old Butterfield Hospital, offers single-level living with underground parking and direct walkability to Main Street. A village where the cannons that helped win the Civil War were made in a foundry that is now a nature preserve, and where the view from the bottom of Main Street has not changed in 200 years. Number 2. Beacon. 20 years ago, Beacon was a fading industrial town in the Hudson River with boarded-up storefronts and not much of a reason to stop. Today, it is one of the most culturally alive small cities in New York State, and the transformation happened because of a building. In 2003, the Dia Art Foundation opened Dia Beacon in a former Nabisco box printing factory on the banks of the Hudson. The factory, built in 1929, spans 300,000 square feet. Artist Robert Irwin oversaw the renovation, preserving the industrial architecture and installing vast skylights that flood the galleries with natural light that shifts throughout the day. The result is a daylight museum where the art changes depending on when you visit. And the art is staggering. Richard Serra, Andy Warhol, Louise Bourgeois, Dan Flavin, Walter de Maria, each artist gets their own gallery scaled to the work. Here is the detail that stops most people. Dia Beacon has more exhibition space than the Guggenheim, the Whitney, and the Museum of Modern Art combined. It is sitting in a former cookie box factory in a city of about 15,000 people on the Metro North Line. Beacon residents over 65 get free admission. But Dia is the spark, not the whole fire. The revitalization that followed transformed Main Street into a walkable stretch of galleries, restaurants, vintage shops, and coffee houses that feels organic rather than curated. The Beacon Farmers Market runs weekly. Long Dock Park offers open fields, boat launches, and community programming on the waterfront. Mount Beacon, accessible from the edge of town, has hiking routes with panoramic overlooks of the river and the Hudson Valley, suitable for varying levels of fitness. The 2.5-mile trail up Mount Beacon is steep in places, but the fire tower at the top offers views that stretch from the Catskills to the Hudson Highlands, and on clear days you can see all the way to the skyline of Manhattan, 60 miles south. Healthcare access runs through nearby Mid-Hudson Regional Hospital in Poughkeepsie, a straightforward drive north, and the Metro North Station sits steps from Dia Beacon itself. A train to Grand Central takes about 90 minutes. For retirees who want culture, nature, and city access without living in a city, Beacon threads the needle. The fact that Newburgh across the river has been undergoing its own waterfront renaissance means the wider region is growing around Beacon, not just within it. A factory that once printed boxes for Nabisco cookies now holds more art than 3 of Manhattan's biggest museums, in a town that rebuilt itself around what came next. And, number 1, Saranac Lake. There is a town in the Adirondacks where people once went to die, and it became one of the best places in New York to grow old. That is not poetic exaggeration. That is the actual history of Saranac Lake. The village sits at about 1,500 feet, surrounded by the Saranac chain of lakes and the spruce and birch forests of Adirondack Park. Population is roughly 4,900. The downtown runs along Main Street and Broadway, where locally owned shops, restaurants, and galleries occupy buildings from the late 1800s. Lake Flower, right at the edge of the village, reflects the high peaks on still mornings in a way that looks staged but is not. In 1873, a young doctor named Edward Livingston Trudeau arrived here expecting to die. He had tuberculosis. His brother had already died of it. In the 19th century, the disease killed 1 in every 7 people. But Trudeau spent time in the open mountain air and recovered fully. He moved his family here in 1876 and devoted the rest of his life to understanding why. In 1884, he opened the Adirondack Cottage Sanitarium, the first facility of its kind in the United States. Cold mountain air, rest, and proper nutrition as weapons against tuberculosis. The first patients were 2 factory workers from New York City, treated in a one-room cottage called Little Red that cost $350 to build. The sanitarium became the model for tuberculosis treatment across the country. The demand outstripped the sanitarium almost immediately. Cure cottages, private residences adapted with wide porches and balconies where patients could sleep outdoors, sprang up across the village. Even the Adirondack chair has its roots in these cure porches, designed so patients could sit for hours with a book or a blanket in the mountain air. Antibiotics ended the sanatorium era in the 1950s. The sanitarium closed in 1954. But the village did not disappear. The cure cottages became homes. The medical infrastructure became the foundation for the Adirondack Medical Center and the Trudeau Institute, which still conducts infectious disease research today. And it thrives. The Saranac Lake Winter Carnival, running since 1897, is the oldest winter carnival in the eastern United States. The centerpiece is the Ice Palace, a massive structure built from blocks of ice harvested from Lake Flower, lit from inside at night. Baker Mountain, a short and manageable hike, offers views of the high peaks. The Adult Center provides meal services, fitness classes, and social programming for seniors. A town built for the dying that became a place for the living, where the porches that once held patients holding on now hold retirees holding a glass of something cold, watching the sunset behind the same mountains that saved a doctor's life 150 years ago. 10 towns, 10 completely different answers to the same question. What does it actually look like when retirement works? What connects them is not a price point or a climate chart. It is something harder to measure. Each of these places has a reason to get out of bed that has nothing to do with obligation. A lake to walk to, a museum that changes with the light, a main street where someone knows your order, a mountain that is close enough to see from your kitchen window and easy enough to hike before lunch. New York is not the first state most people think of when they think about retiring well. That is partly because the word New York still means Manhattan to most of the country, but the state beyond the city is enormous, and it is full of towns that have been quietly getting this right for decades. Towns where the history is not a plaque on a wall, but a building you walk into. Towns where the healthcare is better than it has any right to be. Towns where the water is clean, the seasons are real, and the porch is not just decoration. If any of these places surprised you, that is the point. The best retirement towns are not always the ones that show up on the lists. Sometimes they are the ones you find by accident, on a drive you did not plan, in a part of the state you forgot existed. If this video changed the way you think about retiring in New York, subscribing takes 1 second, and it helps more than you know. Drop your favorite from this list in the comments. I read every one of them. I will see you in the next one.